Hello, my name is Mansi Desai. I am from third year and my today's topic of presentation is diagnosis of peripheral vascular disease from physiotherapy point of view. Before going to diagnosis, let us know what is peripheral vascular disease. So, it is a blood circulation disorder that causes the blood vessels outside of the heart and brain. As the name suggests, peripheral, so it's not central, to narrow, block or spasm. Causes and risk factor. What causes and what are the risk factors of peripheral vascular disease? So first is commonest cause, that is atherosclerosis. What atherosclerosis does is it hardens and narrows artery by deposition of cholesterol and lipids in the inner layer of artery, that is tunica intima, by forming plaques. Next is thrombosis and embolism, formation of blood clot which leads to embolism. Next is post-surgery. Due to incision in muscle and other structures, there occurs stasis of blood which may lead to thrombosis. For example, post-total knee replacement, it is always advisable to stretch calf muscles to prevent deep vein thrombosis. Next, sedentary lifestyle. It increases fat by decreasing high density cholesterol and increasing low density cholesterol, which is a bad cholesterol. Smoking. Cigarettes contains nicotine, which causes vasospasm and decreased circulation. And carbon monoxide formed binds with hemoglobin, producing carboxyhemoglobin, which increases platelet aggregation, leading to thrombosis. Next, hypertension. It causes thickening of muscular layer of artery, that is tunica media, making it inelastic, which causes decreased blood flow. Next is obesity. Excess fat ultimately causing atherosclerosis. Diabetes mellitus, what it does, in diabetes mellitus there is hyperglycemia and insulin resistance, which triggers arterial stiffening and increased susceptibility of arterial wall to atherosclerosis. So these are the causes and risk factors. Next is pathophysiology. There are two types of arterial disease. One is there are two types of vascular disease. One is arterial and another is venous. Right? So what is pathophysiology of arterial disease? Any occlusion such as atheromatous plaques or embolism, which we have seen in causes, it decreases amount of blood supply to the extremity. Initially what happens? Body develops collaterals to supply, which transports sufficient blood to the extremity at rest. But when affected person does activity, the demand of oxygen increases, which these collaterals are unable to transport, leading to muscle anoxic or ischemic, and production of lactic acid occurs due to anaerobic metabolism. So the main cause of pain here is lactic acid. Here you can see this is the normal blood vessel. Here the plaque has formed, yellowish deposition you can see, right? That is a lipid plaque which decreases the blood flow. Here there is more blood flow, decrease, and here it is fully blocked, right? So in this way the plaque forms. What happens in venous disease? So when the valves of superficial or deep veins becomes incompetent, right? So the blood becomes stagnant in the veins, leading to high pressure, thus becoming to become varicose veins. Also, this stasis of blood causes injury to the vessel wall, which goes into inflammatory reaction, which leads platelet aggregation, and which further leads to hypercoagulability of the blood and forms thrombosis. So you can see, right? This is the normal vein where the valves are competent, but here the valves have dilated. So the blood which goes against gravity with the help of these valves, now the valves have become incompetent, so it cannot go against gravity, as the pumps we say are not working, and so it regurgitates back, right? Okay, so this was physiology, pathophysiology I mean, and it is the most important thing you must know, right? So before going to assessment part, we should know the difference between neurogenic origin pain and vascular origin pain. This should be known because some symptoms of both are common, right? So we should know what is the actual cause behind the pain, right? So in neurogenic, it is caused due to damage to spinal cord or nerves, as in disc herniation or disc prolapse, right? And in vascular, causes by insufficient blood flow, that we have seen in definition. Now pain is from proximal to distal. Why? Because there is spinal cord or disc herniation or prolapse, so there is compression of nerve roots. So pain is from spinal cord to the periphery, so proximal to distal. Where in vascular disease, pain is from distal to proximal, right? Here, what is the type of pain? So it is sharp and tingling, as we have seen also in radiating pain, right? Whereas in vascular, it is aching or cramp like pain. Here pulses are normal, whereas in vascular, pulses may be decreased, as in case of arterial disease due to occlusion. In neurogenic disease, there is no change in the skin, whereas in vascular, skin becomes hairless and pale or pigmented. Pale in case of arterial disease and pigmented in cases of venous disease, right? Now patient assessment. So as in all the cases, when the patient comes to you, we take all the demographic data and we assess the patient. Similarly, herein also, when a patient comes to you, we start with demographic data, wherein we ask name for calling the patient, age. Why age is important here? Because with increasing age, in old age, there are more chances of there occurs sclerotic changes, right? So old age people are more susceptible to these diseases. Then gender. Why gender is important? Because males are more predisposed to this disease, and also postmenopausal women due to lack of estrogen, as you all know that it is a cardioprotective hormone, right? So that was about demographic data. Now risk factors. So they are of two types, modifiable and non-modifiable. What are non-modifiable risk factors? They are age, gender and heredity, which we cannot change, right? Modifiable risk factors we have already seen, that is sedentary lifestyle, smoking, hypertension, obesity, diabetes, mellitus, that we can have change in it, right? Then we take history. In history, we include like past history, present history, medical history. If the patient has cholesterol or heart disease or any kidney disease. Then family history, heredity. Heredity is also in heredity, if the patient's family members, close relatives, same blood groups have the disease, then they are more susceptible. Personal history includes diet and occupation. Diet, maybe patient is on high fat diet, then we can ask patient to stop it, and we also get the idea that due to high fat diet the patient may have this disease, right? Occupation, yes, occupation is important, because in some occupation, for example, we say traffic police, they have to stand for prolonged period of time, so they tend to develop this kind of disease, right? Then pharmacological history. Patients, or you say women who are on prolonged use of oral contraceptive pills are more susceptible to produce deep vein thrombosis, right? Then investigation history, like if any done for lipid profile, you may know about cholesterol, color Doppler, they are done for vascular disease particularly, right? Next is, before moving further, we should know what is the difference between arterial and venous disease. Differentiating is very much important to give the treatment, right? So what happens in arterial disease is there is pain on exertion. Why pain on exertion? Because as we have seen in pathophysiology, at rest the collaterals provide enough oxygen to the part, but on exertion the oxygen demand increases, and so collaterals are not able to supply. Whereas in venous disease, pain occurs at rest. Why? Because during rest there is more stasis of the blood, as muscles don't work. And in venous disease, if you see, their pain is relieved by doing activity. Why? Because when you walk, if you are having pain in your leg and you have venous disease, but you walk, so your muscles contract, which aid in pushing the blood from your peripheral vein, that is blood that is stagnant in your leg, to push it to your heart. So it the muscles like calf muscles also work as pump, right? So in venous disease, pain is relieved by doing activity, whereas in arterial disease, as I said, there is pain on exertion and it is relieved at rest. Why? Because like we have seen in pathophysiology, that when you rest, the oxygen demand is fulfilled by the collaterals, and so the lactic acid produce is abolished. Right? Now, what are the skin changes in both? In arterial disease, there is cold skin. Why cold? Because there is less blood supply or no blood supply. When you compare it with the other limb, it is hairless or there is less hair growth. Dry and shiny skin. Whereas in venous disease, the skin is warm because there is more blood is there, swelling is formed, so there is more accumulation of the blood. So the skin is warm and it is thickened. Okay, in chronic cases, ulcers also develop in vascular diseases. So ulcers are severely painful and deep-seated in arterial diseases. Whereas what happens in venous disease, ulcers are less painful and they are superficial. Okay, in arterial disease, pulses are weak or absent. I have told you that due to occlusion, the pulses become feeble. Whereas in venous disease, pulses are normal. In arterial disease, edema is absent, but there is presence of edema in venous disease. Why? Because of accumulation of blood. Right? So this is important for you to know the difference. Otherwise, you won't be able to differentiate it. Now, on observation, what do you observe in a patient? So body build, endomorph, mesomorph, ectomorph. Thin patients, okay. Medium patients, okay. But endomorph, that are obese people mostly. So they have more susceptibility, as we have discussed, right? Obesity as a risk factor. Posture. It may happen that due to pain in one extremity, patient may not be able to take weight when in standing. So you may observe that. Swelling or edema, as I have said, in venous disease, there will be edema or maybe pitting edema will be there. Then you may observe any scar, wound, ulcer or gangrene. Right? In chronic cases of arterial disease, gangrene is more susceptible to form. Skin color, there will be pale skin color in arterial insufficiency, right? Or it will be pigmented in venous insufficiency. I have told you the reasons. Pale because no blood supply and pigmented because of extreme blood supply. Now, trophic changes. Thin, shiny, atrophic skin. The skin becomes atrophied. Due to less blood supply, loss of hair, nails are thickened and they become rigid in arterial disease. While brown pigmentation, stasis, dermatitis. It occurs why? Because there is accumulation of blood. It causes injury due to more accumulation of the blood. It gets injuries and small ulcers on the skin and blood vessels, which goes into inflammatory reactions, right? So it occurs stasis, dermatitis. Thickening of the skin also occur in venous disease. Gait, it may be waddling or analgesic gait, right? Because there is pain. Next is on examination. What you examine in the patient. So first is pain. What is the type of pain? So there will be stabbing, cramping type of pain in arterial disease, while there is aching type of pain in venous disease. Rest, when the pain occurs, so rest pain, or there is intermittent claudication. Rest pain, as I have told, occurs when in venous disease, right? Why? Because of stasis of blood. There occurs rest pain. But what is intermittent claudication? So intermittent claudication is, your patient will tell you that if I walk a few steps, like for 5 to 10 minutes, my pain starts. And as I stop for 5 minutes, or if I take rest, then my pain stops suddenly. So that is intermittent claudication. A certain amount of distance is fixed, that after 5 to 10 minutes the pain starts, and as I stop, I take rest, my pain stops or my pain heals away, right? So that is the main clinical sign for arterial disease, intermittent claudication, right? Now aggravating factor, what aggravates the pain, right? And what are the relieving factors, that is what relieves the pain. That is very much important for as a differentiating point. We have already seen that rest is an aggravating factor for venous disease due to stasis of blood, while exercise is the aggravating factor for arterial disease, and vice versa for the relieving factors. I have already told you the reason, right? Now pulse examination. You can check any like dorsalis pedis artery or posterior tibial artery for pulse examination of lower limb, wherein you will find in arterial disease that the pulses are feeble or are completely lost. Why? Because due to occlusion, while in venous disease pulses will be normal, right? So till here it is done. Now what is capillary refilling test? So patient is in supine position, right? Patient is asked to alleviate the leg and then to sit up and hang his leg down by the side of the plinth, right? A normal leg will remain pink, but an ischemic leg changes its color from pallor to pink from it as the ischemic leg means in arterial disease, as the patient alleviates his leg, the color changes pale immediately, and when it comes into dependent position it takes time to come into pink color. That means it is the patient has arterial disease. It takes time for capillaries to fill, right? In normally within 2 seconds, as the patient as the normal person comes into dependent position, immediately within 2 seconds the leg becomes pink, right? So that is capillary filling test. And this is capillary nail refilling test. Here what happens that you press the nail bed, and as you give pressure it becomes pale, and as you leave don't give the pressure, the nail again becomes red. This is for upper limb capillary nail refilling test, right? Okay. Now next is arterial brachial index. What is arterial brachial index? That you have to take the systolic blood pressure of brachial artery, which is in your hand, right? And another systolic blood pressure of any lower foot artery, that is you can take of dorsalis pedis artery or posterior tibial artery. Then you have to divide systolic blood pressure of any foot artery. For example, you have taken of dorsalis pedis artery, so systolic blood pressure of dorsalis pedis artery divided by systolic blood pressure of brachial artery. The answer should come between 1.19 to 0.95. That is the normal range, right? But if it is less than 0.95, then it indicates peripheral arterial disease. Now there is a classification which says the severity of the arterial disease on the basis of arterial brachial index or ABI. So the classification is, if it is, the range is between 0.94 to 0.75, then it is mild peripheral arterial disease. If it is between 0.74 to 0.50, then it is moderate arterial disease. And if it is less than 0.50, then it indicates severe peripheral arterial disease, right? So this was arterial brachial index or ABI. Okay, next is temperature examination. You compare the affected limb with the normal limb. Cold skin, if you find the skin is cold, then it is arterial insufficiency. Why? Because less blood supply. And warm skin in venous insufficiency due to stagnant of more blood, right? Now motor examination, wherein we check is MMT, range of motion, and muscle tightness. Why muscles become tight? Because of chronic if the patient has chronic arterial disease or venous disease, then patient does not use that limb much. So because of in use, the muscle may become tight, and so range of motion may be decreased, or even the strength may be decreased. So it is important to check, right? Now next we come for special test, another, that is Berger's test. What is there in Berger's test is, patient is in supine, right? Then patient is asked to raise the leg, legs of normal individual remains pink even at 90 degree. But in case of ischemic limb, elevation to certain degrees, even if it is less than 90 degree, it will cause marked pallor. The leg will become pale, right? So that angle we have to see. Which angle? There is something called Berger's angle. So what is that? The angle between the limb at which pallor appears and horizontal plane is known as Berger's angle. If this is the angle at which the pallor occurs and this is the horizontal plane, so this angle is known as Berger's angle. And if it is less than 30 degree, it indicates severe arterial disease. So here you need to know is this Berger's angle in Berger's postural test. Okay. Next is rubor of dependency. As the name suggests, in dependent position, there should be rubor or redness, right? So again, patient is in supine position, patient is asked to elevate the limb, then patient is asked to come in the dependent position. What happens? There occurs normal pink color, right? But if it takes more than 30 seconds to appear color, which is also dark red, bluish red, then the test is positive for rubor of dependency. Normally what happens that when you come into dependent position, the leg becomes pink immediately, and that is to normal pink that we all have right now, right? But in arterial disease, it takes longer time, in fact more than 30 seconds, and it appears darkish red. See here, you can see this is the position, then this in dependent position the patient has come. So this is the normal leg, it is pink, right, normal pink, but this is dark red and it takes more than 30 seconds to appear this red, right? So this is rubor of dependency. Okay. Next is Edinburgh claudication questionnaire. This is a questionnaire. You just need to ask questions to your patient and it will give you some idea, okay, that yes, if patient is having arterial disease or not, pain is due to arterial disease or not. Okay, so what is the first question is, do you feel pain or discomfort in legs when walking? So if it will be arterial disease, the answer will be yes. Why? Because during walking the oxygen demand increases, collaterals not able to supply the blood, and lactic acid will be produced. So there will be definitely cramping sensation. Next question, does the pain ever begin when you are standing or sitting? So no. Why? Because during standing and sitting there is no activity, so there will be no oxygen demand will be increased, so collaterals will be able to supply the enough blood, right? Next question, do you get it if you walk uphill or hurry? Yes. Why? Because during walking uphill or in hurry, or that is you are running or walking fast, it takes more work of energy. Your muscles have to contract more, work more, so there will be much more oxygen demand. Question is, does it disappears within 10 minutes when you stand still? So definitely yes. Why? Because when you stand still after walking, after 10 minutes the oxygen demand will be accomplished and the lactic acid already has been produced, will be washed out, right? Next question is, do you feel the pain in your calves, thighs and buttocks? So yes. Why? Because in lower limb arterial disease, these are the main sites, calves, thighs and buttocks, where the pain occurs, right? So this on the left side, if your answers are of left side, then the patient has peripheral vascular disease, that is mainly arterial disease. And if the answers on the right side are present, then the pain is not due to arterial disease, there may be some another problem, right? Okay, so next we see is venous filling time. What it is there? Again, patient is in supine position, extremity elevated, then patient is asked to come into dependent position. Time is noted in how much time the superficial veins are filled or distended, right? So normal timing for filling is 15 seconds, right? But if there is arterial insufficiency, it takes more than 15 seconds to fill, and if there is venous insufficiency, it takes less than 15 seconds to fill. So the time is to be noted, right, as shown in the figure, that the leg is elevated, and when it comes In the dependent position, the time is noted up till the superficial veins are distended or filled. Normal filling time 15 seconds. If arterial insufficiency takes more time to fill, that is more than 15 seconds, and if venous insufficiency less than 15 seconds, right? Okay, next is Brody-Trendelenburg test. Okay, it is done in two phases. What has to be done is patient is in supine with lower extremity elevated to allow venous blood to empty. Now, a tourniquet is after the veins, superficial veins are emptied, a tourniquet is tied on the thigh, in mid thigh, as shown in the figure. You can see on right side figure, right? Then patient is asked to stand. Now, if the veins fully distend within 5 seconds before tourniquet is released, right? We have already tied the tourniquet, which we don't have to release. So, if with the tourniquet on, the veins distend, superficial veins distend within 5 seconds, there is valvular incompetency in the deep veins, right? Valvular incompetency in deep veins. Now, in phase 2, what it is done, that tourniquet is released. So if the again veins are distended within 5 seconds, then there is incompetency of superficial veins, right? So normal timing in phase 1 before 30 to 35 seconds, in phase 1, when the tourniquet is tied, it takes normally 30 to 35 seconds to fill the veins, but it is filled immediately. That means blood has not gone up during elevation, so it fills immediately as the position comes independent due to gravity. So there is incompetence of deep vein. It occurs due to thrombosis of deep vein. While in phase 2, after the normal timing is 20 seconds. After tourniquet is released, within 20 seconds, the veins are filled. But it also here occurs immediately within 5 to 10 seconds. So there is incompetency of superficial vein. So you have to remember over in this test is in phase 1, if it with tourniquet on, if veins distend immediately within 5 to 10 seconds, then it is valvular incompetency of deep veins. And in phase 2, with tourniquet released, if the veins distend within 5 to 10 seconds, then it is incompetency of superficial veins, right? Okay. Then next is Hohmann's test, or you can say Hohmann's sign. What it is, that patient is in supine position, examiner supports thigh with one hand and foot with the other. As you can see in the figure, one hand below the knee and other on the foot, right? Then patient bends the hip and knee, as again shown in the, you can see in the figure, and then firmly and abruptly dorsiflexes the ankle. There will be deep calf pain, which indicates positive Hohmann's test or positive Hohmann's signs, which indicates deep vein thrombosis, right? So this is Hohmann's test. Next is Perthes test. What happens? That tourniquet is tied just below saphenofemoral junction, right? You can see in the figure where it is tied. Then patient is asked to walk for 5 minutes. If after walking for 5 minutes, if patient complains of severe pain in the calf region or superficial veins becomes more prominent, you can see this. See, these superficial veins have become prominent, right? It indicates deep vein thrombosis. Why? Because after tying the veins, you have tied the superficial vein, but deep vein are still working. So from superficial vein, the blood goes into deep vein. But in deep vein, as blood cannot move upward due to thrombosis, so blood from superficial vein will not be able to go in deep vein, and so there will be prominency of superficial veins due to increased pressure in superficial veins, right? So this is Perthes test. It is also for deep vein thrombosis, right? Next is percussion test or Squat's test. What in this you have to palpate saphenous vein, which is distal to the knee on medial side, and you have to palpate another point 6 inches above knee on medial side. You can see the 2 points on figure clearly, right? Now you have to tap above 6 inches above knee. On first palpation you have to tap there. What you will feel is you will feel a wave of fluid in saphenous vein distal to the knee. Why this occurs? Because of incompetency of the valves, right? Because valves are incompetent, so the blood or fluid is regurgitated back downwards. Otherwise valve won't allow to go it down. It always pushes it upward in one direction only, right? But due to valvular incompetency, the blood is regurgitating back, right? So this is percussion test or Scott's test. Okay. Others, these are two tests. First is air plethysmography. So it quantifies volume change of blood, quantity of volume of blood change, how much blood changes take place from artery to vein and vice versa. It quantifies volume change of blood in artery and vein, so during rest, standing, walking, etc. with a pressure cuff. It is tied on your foot or leg. With this we can observe arterial inflow and venous obstruction both. So air plethysmography is for both. Second is transcutaneous oxygen. It measures oxygen at skin level and gives idea about arterial circulation. So this is only for arterial insufficiency, right? So here I conclude my lecture with this list of special tests differentiated for arterial insufficiency and venous insufficiency. I am telling you in brief again. Palpation of peripheral pulses will be weak or absent in arterial insufficiency due to loss of blood, right? Then we see is of capillary refilling test, wherein patient is asked to lie down or in supine position. Patient is asked to alleviate the leg. In normal leg, the normal person, the leg will remain pink even if it is raised. But in ischemic leg, when they come into dependent position, it becomes pale. It has already become pale when it was raised. So when it comes into dependent position, it takes time to convert the pale leg into pink color, right? So that is capillary refilling test. In normal person, it occurs capillary refills within 2 seconds, but in ischemic or in arterial insufficiency, it takes more than 2 seconds to feel the capillaries. Next is ankle brachial index. So that I have told you, I have to divide systolic blood pressure of ankle or dorsalis pedis artery divided by systolic blood pressure of brachial artery. So the normal range is 1.19 to 0.95. If the answer or if your ratio is less than 0.95, then it indicates peripheral arterial disease, that is ankle brachial index. Next is rubor of dependency. As I have said, the name suggests that in dependent position there will be rubor or redness. So following elevation of limb, then patient is asked to come into dependent position. The color changes take place. It takes more than 30 seconds to appear red, and that to dark red it takes place, bluish dark red, right? It occurs in arterial insufficiency. Otherwise it is normal pink, which occurs immediately after coming into dependent position. So it is somewhat, this test is somewhat similar to capillary refilling test, rubor of dependency, right? Next is Berger's postural test. What have to do? Patient is in supine position, then again patient is asked to alleviate the leg, then at 90-degree angle, the skin remains pink in normal person, but in patient of ischemic limb, elevation to certain degrees also will cause marked pallor, and there is something called angle, Berger's angle, right? That I have explained you, the angle at which the leg becomes pale with compared to horizontal is the Berger's angle, and if it is less than 30 degree, it indicates severe arterial disease, right? Next is Edinburgh claudication questionnaire that I have explained you, right? Now venous insufficiency. In venous insufficiency, first we will see is venous filling time. So again, patient in supine, patient is asked to elevate the leg. It is elevated up to almost 1 minute till the superficial veins get emptied, and then patient is asked to come into dependent position. The time superficial veins take to fill is the venous filling time. Normal timing is 15 seconds. If it is more than 15 seconds, it is arterial disease, and if it is less than 15 seconds, it is venous disease or venous insufficiency. Right? Then Brody-Stredlenburg test, same procedure in two phases. First phase with tourniquet tied. So what happens with tourniquet tied? So if veins fully distend immediately or within 5 seconds, right, after the patient comes into dependent position, then there is valvular incompetency in deep veins. And if distension occurs after tourniquet is released, if distension occurs within 5 seconds or immediately, then after incompetence of superficial veins. Right, so that is Brody-Stredlenburg test. Next is Homan's sign. So patient is supine, and examiner abruptly and firmly dorsiflexes the patient's ankle. Right, so there is deep calf pain, which indicates positive Homan's sign. Perthes test, wherein patient is in standing position or tourniquet is tied below saphenofemoral junction. Patient is asked to walk for 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, there is deep calf pain, or there is a superficial vein becomes prominent. I have told you the reason, because there will be collection of fluid in the superficial veins due to deep vein thrombosis. So Homan's sign, Perthes test, both indicates deep vein thrombosis. Even Brody-Stredlenburg test phase 1 indicates deep vein thrombosis. Next is percussion test. I have told you to palpate two things. First is saphenous vein, that is below knee and medial side, and another point above 6 inches knee. Right, so above 6 inches you have to give a tap, and at saphenous vein you will feel a wave of fluid, which will indicate that there is valvular incompetency. Right, due to, again here, because the valves are incompetent, so they are not allowing the blood to move upwards, and so the blood regurgitates. So these were all the special tests. I hope you are clear how to assess a patient of peripheral vascular disease. Right, thank you.